we've had a really fun time already. Anybody who's already starting to watch, we'll give them a couple minutes to get on, trying to get our little setup here. Marissa had a super sweet microphone that did not microphone.
The thing is useless. I was trying to be professional.
If you want, you can still wear it. So
I'll just look cool, but you won't be able to hear me any clearer.
Yeah. So do you train other stuff out of the gym? I don't think I've ever talked to you about the gym that you train at. Is this your gym or is this somebody else's gym? Or
I have a co-owner, so me and my business partner.
Okay.
Yeah, and so like probably 25% of what I do is kettlebell sport here. Most of what I do is lifestyle training, clients, strength training, getting people fit for life. And then we have our kettlebell sport team here that trains 3 days a week, and then I do online coaching as well. Yeah. And
that sounds a lot like what our stuff is. I mean, our gym is primarily jiu-jitsu, and then kettlebell is like 7% of it.
Most people watch when I don't do that. You look like you're suffering. So it's a special type of person that wants to do kettlebell sport. It's true. And sticks with it.
It really is true. It's hard when new people come in, you're trying to figure out how to best get them interested in it, because that it is really hard. And when they come in and they first start training, they have this idea of, they see the movements, they understand what's happening, but then when they start to do it, it gets really complicated and they start to struggle, and you're trying to get them over that hump where they're finally at a point where it feels a little bit natural and they can get to where they enjoy doing it and they don't just feel like they're struggling. And then all these people that are around them that have been training for like 10 years, they're like, oh, I fucking suck. You're like, well, you don't, you're just starting, and trying to get them over that hump where they like want to keep doing it and they feel like they're terrible at it is hard, especially I think as an adult, where you can choose whether you want to go or not go. Like when you're a kid, you're just like, hey, you're going to go play baseball and you're playing the whole season. We signed you up and you're paying.
Yeah.
So, okay. So we've got about 10 people on here. Corissa, if you just want to kind of give us an overview of who you are, what you do, like how awesome you are.
Okay. So I've been lifting kettlebells for 15 years now, but kettlebell sport I didn't start until 2014. So my previous history is with hardstyle kettlebell, and the transition to sport was really hard for me, and especially coming from a bit of a strength background, because previous to kettlebell at all, I was doing just general strength training. So learning how to transition between using as much power and force as possible to kind of trying to allow momentum to do work for you was a big one for me. So yeah, lifting kettlebells since 2014. So I've got Sarah here with me. I'll just introduce her really quickly too. She's going to be my Vanna White, and she's been doing kettlebell sport with me since the same time. She said, I want to come and join in with you, and I said, I have no idea what I'm doing, but she trusted me enough. So she'll be here. I'll be using her to demo as well. And then I've been coaching, I guess since the same time, learning both how to do the sport and then how to teach from there. And we're at my gym, the West Shore Warehouse in Langford, BC, Canada, where, primarily I'm doing lifestyle coaching, and then as well as kettlebell sport. Do you want to know anything about like my PRs, or should I be talking about that? Is that cool?
Not necessarily, but you totally can. You guys, like, Corissa's a very established, very good lifter. I'm always, when I go to meets, like, I'm always like watching to see how she does, so like I can see like what I need to do. So I do consider you like a competitor.
I don't
You know,
know that rank yet, but one day.
I think you're awesome. So I'm always like watching your snatch technique and like reviewing it and like seeing what I can adapt and use from it. So I think it's really cool. So sorry, somebody is trying to find, let's see if I can go share this link. So for anybody that is watching that knows somebody else, it's on the Facebook Live video. Let's copy, send this over here, paste. There we go. This is always like a trying to get everybody in the right spot. Like, so we used to do this just on Facebook Live, which was, I think, easier for people to find, but it was really complicated to get the other person on the Facebook Live. Like, it wouldn't work if they were on a computer. Like, it would only work for them to add in if they were on an iPad or a phone. And so it just got like super complicated. So I tried to switch over to Zoom where we would just live broadcast it. Hopefully it would be clearer and then it would be easier to find, but I think people got used to doing it the other way. So yeah. So I thought that this was going to be a really interesting topic. And, we were kind of talking about where you wanted to go with this conversation. We were trying to figure out like what to name it. And so we talked about naming it rule 1, don't suck, rule 2, see rule 1. So that used to be up in the gym. And I love this saying because I think it just focuses on like just getting better every day. Like just try and do better every day. Pick one thing and get a little better at that. And if you're not doing well, just like go back and pick one more thing to try and like work on. It sounds really aggressive, like don't suck, but it's just like try and work and get better every day.
Well, and then at the end of the day, that's all we can do. And we all have to work on something. So we all suck a little bit at something, right? So that's a good name for the seminar today. So I thought I would kind of go over common mistakes and then some fixes as well with that. And then we'll kind of see where we go with it. I have a bit of an outline, but
we do have one question, which I guess you could probably answer right now. So they want to know, what do you really specialize in and what drew you to that particular event, either beginning or now or?
That's a tough question to answer because it depends on the year. It almost depends on the day. So I have been competing in triathlon since 2018 or 2017, I guess. But initially it was triathlon over 3 days, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then I transitioned to doing that all on one day. I love all of the lifts, but I did start out snatching only. And then when I first joined, kettlebell sport, it was women doing single arm. So I did one arm biathlon, and then really focused in on snatch. And then I hired Dennis at one point in my training career, and he said, "You're not a real kettlebell lifter unless you lift doubles." And I was like, "Oh my God."
I believe I've heard this before also.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, Dennis is a
how very Russian.
Not someone who's harsh. Like, he's not someone who's like, it wasn't like in a harsh way or anything. And I thought, oh my God. And so I remember starting with doubles and thinking, this is so awkward. Like, how do I swing these between my legs? Like, holy shit, this is a cardio challenge doing long cycle. So I don't really know how to answer the question. I love long cycle, but those days that I don't love long cycle, right now I'm really finding jerk to feel solid right now. So like I'm loving jerk. I'm struggling a bit with snatch. I go through phases with snatch. I'm doing some changes with it. So my numbers are going down, but I'm changing my technique. So eventually they will go back up again. So it's taking a lot of thinking. I do love snatch for the flow and the feel of it. So I don't know if I could say I specialize in anything other than all three. I love them all. Yeah, yeah. So I work all three lifts most of the year.
So I think it's a good point to make, because for kettlebell sport, I think it is possible to kind of transition through the lifts depending on like what your needs are. You know, I also started out doing snatch, and then I transitioned into doing long cycle. And then over time, I transitioned into biathlon. And so they can work together. I mean, if you are trying to get better at long cycle, like you have to long cycle, you know, there's no amount of jerking that you can do that is going to improve your leg strength and your leg endurance during long cycle. Because even now, like I can pretty much always do 6 reps per minute on long cycle with the 24s, but I was doing like 8 reps a minute, and transitioning to biathlon and trying to go back to long cycle. My legs are like dying, and there's no way I could do 8 reps per minute right now, even though, you know, I'm jerking at, you know, such a high pace. The leg conditioning is totally different in jerk than it is in long cycle. And it's different in snatch, you know? So if you're trying to get good at one particular lift, you definitely have to like focus on that lift during that time frame.
Totally. Even just having your cleans landing in the right position to get a good spot to jerk overhead, right? Like jerk, you're just up and down, and they're almost always standing or landing in the right position for you to jerk them back up. But long cycle, having that clean and the elbows hit perfectly so you're standing in position to get a strong jerk, I think is a lot, it's a lot different than doing jerk only.
So what lift would you like to start with first on our don't suck saga?
Well, we're gonna go over some snatch stuff, but I wanted to really go over what I think is the biggest point that people struggle with, and also reminding people that masters are mastering the basics. So as much as you might be thinking, oh yeah, I've got this, I've thought that many times in my training career over the last 10 years. And there's always something that you can tweak a little bit more in that, you know, basic movement. So hand insert is huge, and having a relaxed hand overhead. And I think a lot of people still struggle with this. And that is something that will slowly eat away at your grip, tax your forearms, even like your triceps, your arms working way too hard. So I just kind of wanted to show, and Dennis actually posted a really good post the other day showing what happens with the hand insert. So I wanted to show just up close what we're looking for in your hand insert. And then I'm going to have Sarah do some snatches, and then we're going to do a drill that will also help you with this. And then just aside to all of this, everything that I'm teaching today, I have learned from either other coaches that I've worked with, seminars that I've been to, or I found it something that really is beneficial to the lifters that I've worked with. So I can't really take credit for all of the drills. So just know that I'm teaching you what I have learned along my way from, you know, the people that are way above me and have lifted a lot longer. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it's like clear that I'm not making these all up out of nowhere. So, and I'm not taking credit for someone else's work. So I just want to kind of show close to the camera here. So when you're swinging, a lot of people hold onto the kettlebell too tight. So this is, you kind of think, okay, this isn't bad. But what we're actually looking for is some space between the hand when you're holding the handle. And what's happening when you insert your hand through the handle is you're actually letting go and you're pushing your hand all the way up and through. So you really shouldn't see that bottom part of the hand. So some people might say, that's fine. That's not, that will still tax. You want to have the hand all the way through so you can relax it. I've heard, you know, some coaches say, think like your hand's like a chicken foot. I've also heard like reach your hand into the cookie jar. So whatever kind of visual that you like
say playing the flute. Pretend like you get to the point where you can think like you're playing
right?
the flute.
Like, that's a good one too. I played the flute.
Chicken foot. I might have to use that later. I just say limp. I'm like, just limp wrist it. Just limp wrist it.
So yeah, limp wrist, whatever works. So sometimes I'll see people with their hands like this overhead too, right? Like that's tension in your fingers. So if you can have a little space there. Also, if you have really sweaty hands, like
get some airflow through those fingers. Don't have it so tight. If you're so sweaty, all the chalk's gonna come off. So see if you can get some airflow. And again, your hand goes all the way through the handle. That is different. You might not think that's different. That's different. Of course.
I think it's an important point to note too, is that, you know, your grip may be slightly different transitioning from you doing long cycle or jerk to how you're holding during snatch.
Totally.
It is not the same. So, you know, especially when you first start snatching, you are so used to putting that bell in that position that you are for jerk.
Yeah.
And it really, in jerk, you have more tension in that hand overhead than you would for snatch. So there is a slightly different hold.
Yeah, good point.
Between the two lifts.
Yeah. This is specifically for snatch. Yeah, so good point. So your hand position in jerk and long cycle will be different for snatch. But in the case of snatch, you want the hand through, and then you want that limp wrist or chicken foot or hand through the cookie jar. So I'm gonna get Sarah to do some snatches, and then I'm gonna this one, whatever kettlebell. You're gonna, let's do frontward and then we'll do sideways. And then pushing your hand up all the way through the handle.
If she could scoot forward like 2 or 3 steps.
You take a couple steps forward.
One more, just one more step.
Forward.
We'll see.
There you go, you're perfect.
Oh, but it's still
It'll be good. It'll be a good show. So you can see her hand is going through the handle fairly early there. Awesome. And then show us one if you're hanging on too tight. You're hanging on to the handle too tight. So you can kind of see like that much of her hand is. And you can also see even just how it turns, right? Yeah. Right? You can see how it kind of pulls on her wrist. And then let's do a little bit of a late hand insert where it flips over. Sometimes it's hard to show the balance. So hang on super tight and then like let it flip right at the top of it. Right?
So one of the things that you'll notice, like if she's holding onto that bell too tightly, you'll see at the top the bell will start to lift because it's trying to invert, and then it's gonna like kind of bounce down onto her hand. You know, so the tighter she holds it, the more inversion you're gonna get, and the more it's gonna bang down onto your wrist. Oh yeah, side view, that's a good one.
Yeah, side view. Show us all the bad ones.
Can you show us the nice snatch first?
Working to stabilize too, right? Like if she's late on her hand insert and the hand's not going all the way through, then gets a little bit of that impact where she has to absorb. Now show us a good one. I mean, she even feels like this feels so nice. So much better. Right? So the hand goes in early. So
how far up should they be inserting? Like if you're trying to get that perfect insertion, like where should that insertion start?
About forehead. Yeah. So this drill that we're gonna do next is gonna really show you where you should insert your hand. So this is called the clock drill. So I was taught this from Dennis. And there's 3 different spots that you're going to insert your hand, but the last one is going to be the best spot. So the first spot she's going to insert will be about here, and then about here, and then about here. So you want to try this one with a light kettlebell that you can stop. Right, and then now she'll go a little bit higher. Higher, and then follow through. So that last one where she stopped, stop there, right to there. Yeah, so she inserts about here, right? So you want to think that that hand is going really early. That is also coming from her pulling her shoulder back. So this block drill will also allow you to get your hand pushed all the way through the handle. So here, yeah, do the drill. Yeah. There, yeah, right there, and right there. Now show us from a front view and let's see what your hand does. Clock drill. Yeah. Push it through and push it through. And in all those instances, her hand is going all the way through the handle. So this is a really good one if you find that you're struggling with getting that hand insert timing down and getting your hand all the way through the
is focusing on those 3 points and shoving the hand in as far as you can through the handle. So I like to use that one. Sometimes that one can be a little bit tough to get down with new lifters. So I would actually have someone I wouldn't have really have it. So the next one I like to do that people find.
So someone would like for you to go back, and if you can show the 3 variations, meaning proper snatch, hand insertion, holding on too tight, and weight insertion.
Yeah.
Again, from the side, up a little bit closer. We don't necessarily even need to see your feet.
Okay. Yeah. So you're gonna do number 1.
Oh,
I'm gonna
live moving camera.
I'm moving
Yeah,
you.
no, that's good.
I'm shifting. So let's show 3 good ones in a row. 3 good snatches. No pressure, Sarah.
All the pressure.
All the pressure. Okay, now let's do a late insertion. So at the top.
Yeah, that wasn't very good.
Now hang on really tight. Don't let it turn. Can you see that?
Yeah, so I mean, like for anybody who's watching, can you keep doing, so she's like, I don't want to keep doing this, it hurts. So for that, when you're holding on tight to the bell, you can kind of see as the bell's coming over, it's like flopping over because her hand's so tight, and then flopping down onto the wrist. For that late insertion, because the bell is coming around so late, the bell is still moving when she's coming into her overhead position. So for a coach that's watching, like you can see that bell wobble at the top, and you can say, oh, well, you're inserting late because your bell is still moving. It's not finished because you inserted late into the bell. And so you got that wobble there.
Yeah. And sometimes that's hard to see as a lifter, right? Like coaches kind of have the eye to look for those little things, or you can kind of scrub through your video so you're doing slow motion. I just want to show.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think you were bad enough.
It's really hard to do.
So hanging on, that's like a super obvious, right? Late insertion. So we don't want that bang. I mean, that's even late, but my hand gets through the handle. So you might think, okay, this is fine because my hand's through the handle, but you see how much that bangs on the back of the wrist. When you have a good snatch, your hand just slides in through the handle and it's pretty smooth, right? You kind of try to slow it down a little bit, and the hands there. Now, another thing that I find with hand insertion that really helps me, but it isn't necessary, like not everybody does it this way, but I find it really works for me, is when I'm swinging the kettlebell, and Sarah does this too, my hand is actually on the back of the handle, and then I've got space because the kettlebell is going to fall, that I push my hand up through. So I'm catching here for the swing, and then I'm pushing up through here, right? And that also is teaching you, hey, let go. You don't want the handle to be turning in your hand. Like if you have calluses right through here, you're doing something wrong. You're not letting go of the handle. You want your calluses to be here, and you can have some here as well. And then you also want 4 calluses. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you're missing one here, that means you're not getting the grip of all 4 fingers. Same with if you're missing here. So you want all 4 fingers to be doing work there. Not pulling or anything, but you want to make sure that they're connected to the handle. Whether you swing thumb in, I like thumb in because the elbow just kind of naturally bends, right? I can keep super relaxed on that swing, or thumb up, which I know some people prefer. I find it feels a bit sticky for me. It's definitely a personal preference, but principle remains, you don't want to be gripping tight, and you want to let go of the handle to be able to push your hand up through there at the top. I would say that's going to be almost one of the biggest things
that will help with snatch. Doesn't really matter what weight you're lifting. And know that as you move up in weight, the tendency is just because it's heavier, your body's going to want to grab on more. So you have to learn to trust, hey, I don't need to hang on that tight to the bell. I've got a bit of a finger lock there, and being comfortable letting go and pushing your hand up through the handle. So the next thing we're going to go over with snatch is weight transfer. So I'm going to be a robot. Basically, snatch is here, 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 right? So there's weight shift happening here. You don't want to be throwing the bell away from you. That's another thing that's protects your grip. Also, right, you're really getting into the back. You want to be moving your body around the bell and letting the bell drop down almost vertically down through, right? And then up and then through. So what's happening is when you're swinging, it's going to be in the weight will be in the same leg as it's going through your backswing. And then as you come up, you're transferring into that opposite leg. And the pull happens about here, the shoulder pulls back, and then you're inserting the hand through the handle at the top there. And I think that's what a lot of people miss, is getting that weight transfer. When my very first competition was snatch, I was just watching people's feet. I didn't quite understand that their bodies were moving. Again, when you're a beginner, sometimes you don't really know what to watch for. So my first snatch competition, I was moving my feet, but my body wasn't doing anything. And again, I was coming from a hardstyle background, so I was just kind of ripping that bell out, and my feet were moving, but my body wasn't moving. So as much as I can show you like what's happening with my feet, you'll notice different lifters will be doing a little bit different. Like Dennis will rock back onto his heels and his toes come up. He's a little bit more straight on into that frontal plane for snatch, but you'll notice some people are shifting side to side. You'll notice some people's feet don't really move, but their body weight is moving. But the principle stays the same, is the body weight is shifting, shifting, shifting. So a good way to kind of show this is what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get Sarah to snatch from the side. And I'm gonna hold a dowel straight here. And then you're just gonna watch the line of her shoulder. I know you've done a lot on the other side, but I might wait till you do the side already. So you can kind of see, right, like her body shifts back when she drops and it comes forward into the backswing. So she's not straight up and down on snatch there. So she leans into that opposite leg as she drops down, and then she's in the same leg on the way down. But the only foot that moves for her is the same side as she's snatching on. So right side, then her right heel comes up. But she doesn't shift here. But you'll notice when I snatch, I shift into my toe on the way down. Again, doesn't really matter what the feet are doing. Look more at what the body is doing. And I'll just show you what my snatch looks like. I'll show you what my snatch looks like from the side.
I don't think this is that kind of show.
So here.
But I'm sure we could get more people to tune in if you show yourself.
Can you see my feet?
You're plenty far away. You can really come forward about, yeah, right there.
The difference in what's happening here. So body shifts back, and then there. So not only am I using the body weight to help me get the bell up, I'm allowing that pendulum to happen without me having to do too much work. At the end of the day, kettlebell sport is about doing more with less. So you want to be able to allow the kettlebell to do some work, and you want to be able to relax between reps. You don't want to be working so hard that you gas out. And snatch is all about finding a rhythm, finding a groove, and relaxing.
So what's happening when you drop, right? That's your relaxation phase. And your work, it's relax, catch, relax, work, relax. Hand insert is very purposeful. It isn't like bleh, lazy, get your hand in and bring it up there. But once you get into your lockout, you should be able to pack that shoulder, take a breath, and relax.
Somebody pointed out that we've had, we've done a number of different technique sessions. And, whenever you watch these, everybody's going to have a little bit different thing that they do. The concepts are generally the same, but there'll be a little bit different things that they do. And so the key is to really try out the different lifts, try out different techniques, and go with what fits best for you, because it's going to vary based on your body type and your ability, where you can lock out at, the size of your hands. There's so much variation. And so if you go to a seminar or you listen or you're watching other people's technique, you kind of just have to pick and choose like what fits with you, because it does vary for each person. But the concept is the same of you moving around the bell.
Yeah.
And it's like that for for most of the lifts, you're really moving around the bell and trying to allow that bell to do the work. So you're having to do less work while you're lifting.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you'll see so many different variations of snatch. People hitting really that are successful with it, but the principles are fairly the same, right? If you break it down, the principles are the same. People are weight shifting. People aren't gripping too tight. You might see something happen a little bit different with the legs.
So there was one question about breath work, and doing like a variation between how many breaths you're taking during the swing, during snatch specifically. 2 breaths, 3 breaths, like where are you inputting those breaths?
That will be a bit of a personal preference, and then also the pace that you're doing. So you can do a 2 breath cycle or a 3 breath cycle. And then how many breaths you take overhead is going to depend on the pace you're going. So I'll kind of show you, maybe I'll do without the bell, and then I'll do with the bell. A 2 breath cycle would be exhale here, inhale here, your chest lifts. So anatomical breathing with kettlebells. So your chest is lifting, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. That's your 2 breath cycle. 3 breath cycle would be inhale, exhale, exhale, exhale. I did say exhale 3 times in a row. Your body will naturally do those inhales. I find that if you focus on the exhales, your body naturally has to inhale, and it's not a full exhale. When I'm working a faster pace or with a heavier bell, I need more oxygen. So I will do that 3 breath cycle. So what it will sound, I'm gonna breathe really loud. So actually, I think I probably do breathe really loud in competition too. I was gonna say I don't actually do this, but I think it does happen, especially at the end of the set. So it's okay, let's figure out how to breathe here for a second. Or if I'm doing, say, a slower pace. So yeah, breathing cycle does become a bit of a personal preference. Things that stay the same will be the exhale through the legs and the exhale into lockout. How many breaths you take up there is, yeah, how fast you're going, maybe how much air. You don't want to hyperventilate, pant up there, but you definitely want to get some breaths. I did kind of want to go over, since we're talking about variations in snatch technique that I did for about 3 years, that really did help
bump up my numbers, because what it did is decrease the space the kettlebell was falling on the drop, meaning that I didn't have to use my grip as much, and it also really reiterated the weight back. This will be dependent on the pace you want to go. So it did help me up to 20 RPMs. When I found I was going faster than 20 RPMs, my lockout does get rushed. So the coach I'm working with right now has actually kind of pulled me out of that cycle, and now I'm just dropping. So I'll show you. So it's based off on Anton Manisenko's snatch, where there's a dip, right? And so what's happening here as you drop is you're lowering the height of the bell. There is a nice rhythm with it. But again, it's that extra, little bit of extra time to do this on the drop, as opposed to just dropping down. So that's just kind of an aside. There's nothing wrong with that technique. It is just a little bit slower. Do you use your legs more? Yeah, a bit. Did I ever feel like my legs are fatigued in snatch? No. That's me. That might be because of my strength. So might it fatigue your legs? I don't really know, but that is a technique that you can try there.
Yeah, I think always in snatch, you're really just limited by your grip. I mean, your grip and your ability to hold the bell overhead. Like, I've never been like, oh, I just can't do it because my legs are too taxed. It's always like my grip always goes before my legs would ever go, and my shoulders will go before, you know, my legs go.
Totally.
So, I mean, that's why with snatching, like, you just have to snatch a lot. You have to snatch often and really make sure you're taxing that grip, because your forearm muscles, they convert back and decrease in size and endurance very quickly, because they're not really meant or made, you know, for endurance like that. So you'll get it built really up, and then you're like, if you don't do it all the time, like your grip strength just like goes so quickly.
I even find close to a competition, like, you know, tapering off long cycle and jerk is a lot different than tapering off snatch. Like, for me, I find that if I'm not doing longish, even light and long sets, you know, within the week, a week before competing, like, I already feel like I've lost a little bit in the forearms. But again, that's just for me. But you've done, right, like, how many jerks before you've done snatches? Like, I've done long cycle jerk and then snatch, and my legs aren't the limiting factor. It's always what's happening in the forearm or shoulder fatigue that's leading. That's all tied together. So yeah. So next thing with snatch is timing of the pull and not using that pendulum or metronome. So what happens a lot for people, especially if you transition from strength training or hard style, is that, like, we're trying to yank it up there. And with that is like this whole cue that I don't actually really like to use, where people are like, use the hips or pop the hips or drive your hips, which happens a lot when you're coming from like hard style, right? Because like snatch is not like really jerking it out there. You're sending the bell, you know, away from you. You're not gonna snatch like too much power from there. So it's more relaxed, and you only start to pull when the kettlebell is already starting to fly a bit. And then that timing of the pull happens about here, and then the hand is being pushed up. So what happens a lot, right, especially as it gets heavier, is we start to anticipate that, and we start pulling either with our arm down here
early, or we put like really push with our hips. Instead, allow that kettlebell to swing, right? Just to use that pendulum. And then right where it's starting to fly there, that's where you're pulling. It's not a type thing, right? Or from the bottom. I don't know if you can see. Can you tell the difference between that, or do they all look perfect?
They all looked amazing. No, I mean, you can't tell the difference.
So feeling where that is, and that's a lot, you know, kettlebells is a lot about feeling the movement and feeling where that kettlebell is already starting to fly and float, and then that's where you're pulling. You don't want to pull when the kettlebell's heavy. Like down here, it's heavy. I mean, like, if I just was hanging out like this and say like, maybe I should get Sarah to push the bell. But like, I'm not doing anything. My posture looks perfect. But like, the kettlebell's just moving. So assist that with your legs and your hips just gently, right? And then you're using that pull from the arm and then push through. So that's another big mistake that people use and or people do. And so drills for that are things like swing snatch, feeling like, okay, so now I feel you get your swing. Now I feel where that kettlebell is about to get weightless, right? Even taking your hand off the handle at that kind of weightless point. And then things like glove snatch, because it's hard to cheat a glove snatch. I don't know if you ever snatched with gloves on. You don't have any grip. So you have to kind of feel all of that. And if the kettlebell is flying away from you and you have to pull it back, you don't get very far on a glove snatch. So wearing gloves, you know, just have to be cheap 99-cent ones. Keeping that bell close to you and using that pendulum and feeling where, okay, this is where I can time that pull to save your grip. So that's a big one. And if you wait too long to pull, the kettlebell's like way up here, and this is just a little bit more on the back. So it does take time to feel exactly where that is, but that's a big one that people run into on that as well for snatch. Let me just see if is there any questions coming in? We'll like check out.
No, I've been asking them as we've been going. Someone said you're just so good at snatch, it's just hard for you to show bad ones, you know? I'm sure everybody was actually checking their hands, like right after you talked about calluses, everybody, if we could see them, was probably checking their own hands, like, what do mine look like?
What's happening? Okay, so we'll just do one more thing with snatch is letting your elbow drop in, right? Like thinking about kind of like that more like vertical drop, but again, we're not standing up and like just like boom. That is paired with the body going back. So watch that the arm isn't straight out, right? The weight goes back, elbow drops in. So what you're doing is you're unlocking your shoulder, you're unlocking your elbow, and dropping that in. Isn't it so nice to demo with a 8 kilogram bell? Again, from the side. Weight back.
But I think it's important, like you can't try and learn new technique or adjust your technique with a heavy bell. Like you're gonna have to drop down in weight when you're trying to really adjust the technique that you're doing to be able to feel it. Because under that heavier bell, especially if you're not able to snatch with it for 10 minutes already, where it feels comfortable, like you're in survival mode when you're in that heavier weight, just trying to make it through. So if you're not snatching 200 reps in 10 minutes with the 24, I'm not, you know, so when I have to work on technique, like I really do have to drop down so I can try and think about it, because like for a lot of people who are training alone, you don't necessarily always have a coach there. So sometimes I have to film, or I have to really be feeling it. Does the bell feel lighter? Does it feel like it's floating? Do I feel like I'm getting more deflected, so it's coming up, more quickly, so I have less weight in my hands for less amount of time? To really go through those things in your head when you're trying to snatch, and feel it for yourself, like what feels better. Because somebody may ask you to add in a technique fix, and then it makes it worse. There was a question in the drop: is it advisable to move the hand to the back of the handle or stay in the front corner? So I think you talked about it earlier, actually, already, that you transition to the back.
That would be a preference thing. I prefer to move it to the back of the handle. I just find there's not a lot of space. Like if I'm holding it from here and then I turn here, like I almost kind of feels like, to me, my hand gets kind of stuck. Whereas like if I'm here, like the kettlebell is, once I pull it and it's turning, it's gonna drop down. Like just gravity means, like, right? Like it's dropping. So I don't really have to move. I'm just kind of pushing the hand up. So I prefer that. I'm sure there's some people that are successful getting high numbers that way. I feel like I get trapped in there. I don't know if that helps answer.
So how many 10-minute sets do you do in like a week, or how often are you doing 10-minute sets versus like
every day? I'm just kidding.
I think that, when, for me, like my numbers really started to jump when I stopped doing like a lot, when I stopped training it like at jerk or training it like long cycle. And I started doing more extended sets. And when I started adding in light snatch sets after my jerk work, to always be working on that. Always be snatching.
Always be snatching. So this is a hard question for me to answer because I'm working with a new coach right now. So I've been working with a new coach since November. So I'm still figuring out the patterning. I'm doing a 10-minute set, say like every 3-ish weeks. So like I can't really answer personally on that yet because that's based on what my coach gives me. Previously, I would do a glove snatch set once a week. That was anywhere between 7 and 10 minutes. 10-minute set with my comp weight. I rarely, if ever, did until the day of competition. The longest set I would do would be, say, 8 minutes, and sometimes it was 4 minutes, then rest, and then 4 minutes, and then the other side. A lighter bell, would be a longer set. But I've trained with several different training programs, and I found the best results is when I was snatching with a light bell, whether it was like a glove snatch or a lighter bell, a long-ish set, meaning 7+ minutes, once a week. And I find with those,
I think that you have to take into account, I'm sure that you're going, when you're doing these 6-7 minute snatch sets, you're going faster than what you would be doing in competition. So you're not going to make the 10 minutes because you're never doing, which I don't do with any other lifts either. Like you're never doing just like a 10-minute set at your competition pace, which is what I could make, right? I could make it 10 minutes if I go 16 or 17 reps a minute, but then I'm not getting any better.
Yeah. Like the sets are faster. Or if it's a lighter set or shorter than 10 minutes, they tend to be faster. So, if I'm doing a lighter bell, then it would be a couple RPMs faster than, my competition weight pace. And practicing that really fast pace with a light bell does reiterate all of those technique, fixes or focuses, or you have to be fast with your hands. Like, you have to get your hand in there quick. You have to drop the shoulder. You have to find the re-grip spot really, really quickly. You can't be pulling it even with a light bell, or else your forearms start to blow up near the end of the set. So those lighter, faster sets do have a lot of benefit in training. I think probably one of the things that stuck with me the most from the very first seminar I went to with Ice Chamber, and they really reiterated, like, when you're in this sport, it's endurance first, then it's speed, and then it's weight. So it's like, you need to be able to endure the time. Once you can endure the time, then work on picking up your pace. Once you can pick up the pace and you've got both the length and the speed, then you go up in weight. And I think a lot of times with this sport is people get really excited looking at the heavier weights, thinking, oh my God, I can't wait to do this. Like, I can do a really great 5-minute set with this weight, so that means I should be able to go up to this weight and do this. And it's like, the difference between even 6 minutes and 10 minutes is like exponential. Like, you can work up to do a solid 6-minute set with, like, I'm going to say any weight, but obviously not any weight, but like with a lot of heavy weights that you would never be able to do, not never, for 10 minutes until years later. So try not to get trapped in the, like, chasing after weight, and instead, like, chase the time, the speed, and then slowly increase your weight. Because people that are good at something like the snatch make it look easy, and it's not. I had one of the biggest guys that I ever had come to our gym here. He was transitioning from powerlifting, and he contacted me and was like, I saw this really small woman. He's like, was trying to get into kettlebells. I saw this really small woman snatch the 16K bell 200 times. I was like, that looks easy. I could do that. And then he said, and then I tried to do it, and I realized, holy shit, I need to contact someone who knows how to teach me the technique. Because, like, this big, huge, fit guy, and, like, he could not last 10 minutes with the 16 because he didn't have the technique down, right? So I think just be patient and keep working the technique in those lighter, longer sets, and they'll translate really
Okay,
well.
last question, then we probably should move on to another lift, because we've spent almost a whole hour on snatch, which some people probably love, but other people are like, please God, move on from snatch.
You said
so there was a question about, do you have a drill for training out the back swing pull? Meaning, I think he means pulling too soon from, yeah.
A drill?
I think, yeah.
From pulling too soon, swings, and even like kind of like that low swing where you're just keeping the arm super relaxed and then stand. It's going to be feel. So the more you can swing and kind of feel where it's going to fly. So swing, snatch, swing, swing, snatch. You've ever done that black snatch? Like, if you're pulling too early, your forearms are toast on a swing snatch set, or a swing, swing, snatch, like that black snatch where you do 2 swings and a snatch, and then 1 swing, a snatch, and then you finish with snatch, and it's a 10-minute set. It's like 2 minutes with swing, swing, snatch, 2 minutes with swing, snatch, and then 1 minute you finish with snatch. That's a really good drill for training out of pulling early, because if you pull early with your swings and your snatch, forearms are toast. And then the same thing, glove snatch. Swings, swing, snatch, glove snatch. Yeah, I could talk on snatch forever. So I didn't even go over arm connection, but we can leave that for long cycle.
Okay. Just remember, it's just don't suck. It's not be perfect class.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, right? Like, there's no such thing as perfect. So it is. Okay, so let's go over jerk, and then some common things that I see with people and jerking. jerkity jerk. So maybe I'll get Sarah to show us a couple double jerks from the side.
Just jerking it.
Just jerking it. Very warm, yeah. Okay, so let's just stand in rack here. So she's gonna come down, she's gonna stand in rack. Okay, so what we see a lot and what happens for me too as I get tired is when you're standing in rack here is the knees bend. So let's just bend your knees and see. So this is already loading her legs. So if she's standing like this in a 10-minute set, and then she's got to dip down and then jerk overhead, she doesn't really have a lot of power there, and she burns the legs out. So she wants to be straight up and down. And then Sarah is super flexible in her spine, so she can stand and rack like this. But the weight is over her hips there, which is over the legs. So making sure that you're standing up and you're not leaning back. So that's another thing we see in jerk. So let's like lean back a ton, right? So now, if she does that, then the weight's here, and then she doesn't really get the full power from her legs here because you can kind of see her elbows back there. So come back into your, yeah. So now her elbow's like right over her hip, so she can transition that weight from her legs to up to overhead. So those are simple fixes, but not easy. Just in the fact that as you get tired, a lot of people do lean back and they do bend through their knees. So even if you need to kind of like bend through your knees to get like a bit of a recovery, make sure that before you jerk, you stand back up. I don't know if you watch someone like Nakona, he's really good at this. You kind of see his legs like, you know, they relax and then they straighten back up and he loads and then he goes back up for that jerk. And then let's look at Sarah from the front and what's happening with her hands. She laces over, you don't have to do that, you can have them separated. That's again a personal thing. Some people find when they're laced here that they actually end up taxing their grip of the one hand that's holding on too much. So make sure that you're not holding on with too much power here or too much strength. And then I actually like to rack more like this. So I like to have my hands a little bit more parallel here, and the weight is still over here, but like the butts of the bells are kind of more that way.
I have short arms.
She has short arms, so she does a different rack. But she's also not hugging them in like this. Like you can kind of see, you know, where the weight is going in rack. That's not going to be a comfortable place to hold them for a long period of time. And then let's just go overhead. Awesome. There. Thumb is slightly angled back. Again, this is going to depend a bit on your mobility. And then the elbow is pointing on an angle this way. This way she can stack the shoulders there and she's like right into her lats. If she was going to do this, tell me how that feels.
Not stable.
Not stable. And what's going to happen if her arm collapses? That kettlebell is right overhead. You can take this down if it's super tired. So just having positionings, the proper positioning through rack and then into your overhead position is important. And some of these things take a lot of time working with your body and mobility there. So another thing I see a lot, and I was doing it too, and sometimes I still do, is when you go into that first dip, I might actually step in. Get out of the way. Yeah. When you go into that first dip, like doing a little bit of a and down. But when you're in rack, you want those elbows to be digging in and they don't move. So when you're here and you dip down, you're not doing one of these like bouncy. It's kind of hard to exaggerate that. But here, your elbows are digging in, and then when you go down, they dig even more into that shelf, and you're using that power to drive overhead. A drill I like to reiterate this is a dip, and then a jerk. So dip, dip, jerk. to really get those elbows into the shelf. Because even if you move your elbows like this much off that shelf, you're losing that power that you could be using from your legs, right? So even though you want to breathe in rack position, think about your breath like expanding your back almost, as opposed to breathing into your belly and causing your elbows to lift. You should still be able to take a full breath from there without your elbows separating from your body. I'm losing my train of thought here. What's going on with jerk?
You didn't say this, but I think a good point to make for people that when you are jerking, along with not wanting to move those elbows while you are excessively, like, while you're trying to do the jerk, because it's just a bunch of extra work for you to do, which is going to tire your shoulders. You also want to make sure that you're braced during the movement. So that way, when you go to jerk and go to drive up, the bells don't just compress into your stomach and you absorb some of that energy, which is you losing energy, and that platform is solid, that you are braced, so that way your elbows are against a solid platform, so that when you go to jerk, all the energy is expended up into that bell and not just absorbed into your body. It's kind of like if you wear a tennis shoe, right? If you wear a running shoe while you're jerking and you go to press down into the floor, well, the shoe is absorbing energy. So when you go to drive up, it's absorbing some of the power that you tried to create into the shoe. With that solid platform, your lifting shoe, when you push into it, it's pushing back into you. So it's the same thing like on your belly. Like when you're holding that rack, if I'm not braced and tight where, like I've got a solid platform and I'm soft, when I go to jerk and I dip, it's going to absorb down into my stomach. And then you're going to lose some of that energy that you've just tried to create, as well as it's not particularly safe for your back if you're all like loosey-goosey while you're trying to jerk. Okay, I guess there were some questions. So they're asking about breath sequencing. I don't know what you do for breathing sequence. I use breath to figure out my pacing. So 3 breaths and jerk is about 15 reps a minute. And so if I already know in advance, like what my pace is going to be for the set, and then that's how I determine my breath count. And so no matter what the clock says, if I am doing 3 breaths and I'm only at 14 reps, I don't get the extra 15th rep, so it makes it so that as I get more tired and I do need more breath, like I only just stay at that pace. So that's how I use breath count. So I'm not sure, they were asking about breath. So I'm not sure how you do it when you're lifting.
I do something similar. Like I will know how many breaths I need to take between each rep, depending on like what pace I'm doing, whether it's long cycle or jerk, it's like 1, 2, 3, up or whatever. I'm either counting my breath. I do notice sometimes what can happen for me, especially if I'm like struggling through a set, is like my breath might become longer and then I'm off pace because I'm like, slower breath. Yeah, I got 3 breaths here or whatever. So that I can get a bit of hit or miss with that, but I do like to count my breaths in between. It also gives you that rhythm. Like the more you can stay in a rhythm, your body almost just kind of naturally goes and jerk, and jerk, rather than being like jerk. Like you're never really getting into a rhythm. But if you can find that cadence, it's like running. It's like, this is a cyclical sport. It's like rowing. You're just getting your body into a rhythm. It will just go through that rhythm with some work.
And that creates your recovery pattern also, like your legs, your arms, all that needs like blood refilling to happen. So if you're sprinting, then resting, you're not getting that recovery period to allow for those cells to refill and for you to have energy to go for the next rep. And once you, in this lift, there's a bunch of questions that have come up, but in this lift or in this sport, once you hit max, there's no coming back from it. So if you don't pace yourself up to that point and you hit max, that's pretty much done. There's no way for you to come back down from that max, because at that point you're going to stay elevated. Like, you can slow your reps way down and only do, but you're at max. Like, until you put the bells down, you're going to stay there.
Yeah. And once you stop breathing and you can't catch your breath, you're done too, right? Like,
So there was a question. So thoughts on the amount of bell rotation and the position from rack to overhead, which I think that they're talking about when you're coming from here and the position to here, and how much hand rotation you should have in that overhead position.
That's a good question. So that also goes back to how I was like showing her hands, and why I like to have my hands like this. Like, it's almost like you're making a little tent. Is to limit the amount of rotation that I need. Like, my hands are in the position they're going to be in when they go overhead. I don't want to have to rotate my hands into position, because it also like will bring elbows wide, right? But also the bells are going to be moving. So if you can, and again, this is totally going to be based on body, right? Like, if you can have your hands facing the same direction as they're going to be overhead, you're minimizing movement. If I'm like this, and also I'm showing like an exaggeration, you know, it might just be a little bit like this. Then I'm fighting that movement, and the bells might also be rotating overhead. So the bells aren't really like on my body. They're not like, you can see that. But I know also I can get into this position and not everybody can. So ideal, but it's not going to work for everybody. I don't know if you find the same. And then as I'm driving up, I'm thinking about keeping my forearms parallel to come up.
Yeah, for sure. I try to explain people the same way. Like, it's like if your hands were in, you want to be able to clap. You want to keep that neutral inline position all the way up until the rack. Now, you may have some troubles, like, because some people can't extend their arm all the way, but if you're flaring out, you have a tendency that you're going to be pushing also, and then snapping that arm into place. So to really keep those shoulders, you know, rounded when you're in the rack position, and really try and get the back of that tricep onto your belly. Sometimes people will rack and they're really racked on the side of their arm. And so while they are kind of sitting on their body with the weight, you know, as they start to get tired, it's really like pushing and sliding out to the side. And the more neutral or the more inline that you can get, so your arms are perpendicular to the ground, just the way they'd be going up, the less work you're going to have to do, as well as the less slippage that you're going to get here, because the weight is pressing straight down. And you'll need to, I think some people struggle because they don't have a lot of upper back mobility when they're trying to get into this position. But in order to keep that neutral spine on the back side, so you're not like swayed, you have a black background. So you're not, all the weight's not swayed right here to the lower part of your spine. You really have to like round around the bell. So that way your arms are getting down to your body. So even if you have big boobs, just like rubbing all over myself, big boobs or whatever, you've got to sweep underneath those, round your spine to get the backs of those triceps down to your body, so you can get in that neutral position. Because if you're already starting from the outside, like, I mean, you're already going to naturally be driving the arms this way because you're not fully on the platform. You're not fully on your body.
Yeah, and dropping the elbows down along with that too, right? Like, sometimes people are sitting up here, so it's like that. To that.
Okay, so how much do you flex your wrists compared to snatch? We kind of talked about this when we were going over snatch, but if you want to show like a variation of how you're holding the bell in snatch versus how you're holding the bell in jerk in your hand positioning, if you want to do it close.
I'm gonna play around here for a second.
This is
Can you
the
see
circus
that?
act we're now putting on.
Yeah. You want me to do it?
Okay, so yeah, I mean,
So
if you weren't
snatch
watching during,
here.
yes.
Snatch,
Yeah,
I'm
so
like here. Jerk, I'm like here. I'm almost thinking like push through the heel of my hand a bit as I'm driving up. Like snatch is like, where's that cookie jar? I want those cookies. Here, here, the weight is like pushing up through the middle of my, and my hands are slightly back, but I'm not like super tight there either, because, you know, the beautiful thing about, I mean, if you have an ideal lockout, whether it's jerk or snatch, is we're stacking like the bone structure. So we don't have to be super flexed in that position. Your bones are holding the weight once they get up there. And if your shoulders are stacked down, you're not holding it with your muscles. So even though
I usually try and tell people to imagine like there's a string, right? If you had a string connected inside your palm, think like that string is pulling you this way. So my palm is driving, and then my scapula is pulling this down. So there's a pull in both directions, keeping that scapula locked down in while also pressing through or driving through that hand to get to that position, because I hold it similarly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Yeah, hands are definitely different for snatch and for long cycle or jerk. Shall we move on, or do we have more questions there?
I think that's it. Somebody just said that it seems similar to like holding, like if you're a server holding a tray overhead, which it probably really is. I never held a tray over my head, but I would probably drop it. But yeah, it is very, I could see that being very similar.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a good thing to go over. I think also another thing that happened that I see in people's lifting is not getting underneath the bells enough. That is also tied with sometimes a triple extension. So it's either like you're rushing to get underneath the bells, so you're not fully extending on that drive. So it's kind of like, and you're not quite driving it, or it becomes like a push press and you're using the arms too much and the dip is super minimal and you're not getting underneath them enough. Each bell weight, the dip is going to be a little bit different, because the heavier the bells get, the more that you have to drop underneath the bells. So drills for that, and I know you love to do these, especially with what, like 36 kilogram kettlebells. We don't even have those. We do have a set of 40s, but I think people just swing them. So is doing bumps where you're driving up and your arms are, oops, super relaxed. Is focusing on that drive, right? You got that dip, you're driving from the legs. You should be coming up on your toes, knees extended, hips extended. I mean, even like through the back, right? And then dropping under. So careful not to rush that. And I think a lot of times when people are learning or come from a different, say, strength background, they can rely on their arms a little bit too much. Next time they're just dropping under there. And then the same goes for not getting underneath enough. I'm sure you've done like the 4-point drill where you're in first dip, second dip, standing, and then rack. I even like just to break it down to dropping there, pausing in your second dip. So it is, you're jumping, you're driving, you're pushing yourself underneath the weight, right? The beauty of the jerk is that you don't have to use your arms as much as you do for a push press or a strict press.
you're bumping it, and then your body gets underneath the weight. But those two things seem to get, I don't know how to say this in a way, rush through, whether it's either you're not getting underneath them enough, or you're trying to get underneath them before you've even driven the bells up overhead. And if you have strong arms, this can almost be to your detriment because you can get away with it until you can't. So it's like, yeah, I can push press for 5 minutes, but for 10 minutes, so you'll notice that you'll have to get underneath them a little bit more. And then there was one thing when I was just doing that I was thinking about as well, is in your first dip, and it kind of goes with the dip drill, is watching that. When you're coming down, the hips are sinking straight down. Yes, the knees are going forward, slightly up to the side, but you're not like doing this on your dip. Can you see the difference? Is there a difference there? There's a difference, okay. So, right, like, you're gonna lose power, and kind of what I was showing Sarah in rack position, right? She leans back. If you're trying to like go into your dip like this, you don't have that straight line to drive the kettlebells up. So you want to use the power from your legs by going straight down with those hips, and then up. And you almost kind of see, like, what does a body have to do to get the kettlebells up overhead? So that dip drill is also a nice one for reiterating, hey, I'm just going down. You're sliding down the wall, or you can do it like up against the wall too, right? Whoops. Where you're making sure that your back doesn't hit the wall. That's another good drill there. Is that enough on jerk? Should we long cycle? Any more questions on that?
Sure, let's, no.
Not really.
Yeah, we got time. I think we can go into, oh shit, Dana, dang it. You said you talked about multiple 10-minute light sets with snatch leading up to competition. Does this rule apply for jerk as well? I don't ever do any 10-minute snatch or jerk sets prior to competition, mostly because those sets are only, it's like doing a max out on your bench, right? You don't get any benefit from it other than, I guess, mental benefit, but you're not stepping over the line. You're just doing a 10-minute set, which is your max. But your max doesn't give you improvements. Your max just tells you where you're at. So I see it as a wasted training session. I could have done something that was adding to it. And my test set is the competition. That's for me.
I'm the same. I don't know if I have the same like thought process, but I agree with it. More like, you know, how much does my central nervous system have to recover? You know, when can I train hard again? Or like, what's the pressure on my wrists and my forearms going through a 10-minute long cycle or jerk set? You know, what's the recovery there? Like, you know, coming off of triathlon on Saturday, like I lifted super short set on Monday, and it was like my forearms were just like so swollen, and my hands, and I had hand pain. I'm like, this is 2 minutes. So, you know, 10-minute sets can be a little bit harder on the body. And I think for a lot of people too, is like just trusting your training cycle is going to take you and get you ready to do 10 minutes. Like I've done a training cycle where the longest set, I actually just recently seen, but you know, years ago, my very first 10-minute with the 16s, the longest set I did with the 16s for long cycle was 6 minutes. And then competition day came and I did 10 minutes. And, you know, just recently I just did 6-minute sets for jerk, and long cycle was the longest I did with the 20s. And then on the weekend I did 10-minute sets. So it's like trusting that your training is building you up the volume and the endurance that you need to do 10 minutes. Do you need to continue doing 10 minutes before you do 10 minutes? I don't believe so. I've never really done it, so I don't have people do it. Yeah.
Yeah, Really, the only things I do where I'm doing a 10-minute set or longer is if it's very lightweight. So I'm just doing like a long endurance set where I'm doing like 13 minutes with the 14s, you know, or yeah, I mean, but that's like, I don't do those very often, but that would be like the only time I would be doing over like 10 minutes straight.
Yeah.
So Dana, Dana, do you have any other questions before we move on? It's a little bit delayed, so he could.
Like do 10 minutes now.
Okay, so yeah, I think we're probably ready because we got about 10-ish more minutes to talk about maybe cleans, because jerk is relatively the same.
Yeah.
There's some variations in leg distance and stuff that you do for jerk rather than long cycle, but the movement is relatively the same.
Yeah, and honestly, like cleans and snatch have some of the same principles with the arms and stuff. But the one thing that even goes in with long cycle, but also jerk, that I didn't go over, that I think is a really important thing, is making sure you're not controlling the bells down from overhead. Like that's a big thing, is when you're dropping from overhead, and yes, you want to aim the elbows into hit, is watch that you're not doing that. And like sometimes it's like, what do you mean? But just let it drop in. That's your relaxation phase. If you're controlling the bells in any way, you're using your muscles, and that's going to be fatiguing for you. So cleans. Well, Kim, you're like the clean queen. You're the clean queen. I feel like cleans are kind of my nemesis. I have a little bit of an imbalance, and my left side is flies high. But common thing we see with cleans is people cleaning high. Kind of hit the shoulders and then.
Can you turn to the side so they can see that? So what she's doing right now, she's really, when you go to drive the bells, right, you've got a lot of energy out, and as you go to drive the bells forward, you're letting your arms come away from your body. So then the arms start to swing up, right? The kettlebell's still rising, rather than just like in snatch, you're trying to get that narrow pull. So when you go to clean, your elbows just land right in the spot. And so when you let them swing away from you like that, it's a bunch of extra energy that you have to use. And then you're going to have that land in rack, which may cause you to have to readjust, just like she was doing during the swing. Do you want to show a nice clean?
It's more work, right?
So if you can just keep going, I'll just walk through what you're doing, you know? So when you have a lovely side profile, by the way. So if you look like on her clean, you know, there's only a couple relaxation positions when you're cleaning. And on that backswing where she's getting her legs straight, that allows for blood refilling. So you want to allow the bell to swing all the way through. So that way you have a position to drive your knees from into the bell. So she swings back, legs straighten, and then her knees drive back through to put the inertia into the bell to get it up to her chest. So along with that, like she's still deflecting back as she sits through the bell to keep that narrow pull up into the rack. You're doing amazing.
Thank you. 8 kilogram bells. That was good. A big thing that I struggle with and I think a lot of people do, and it's the same with snatch, right? It's like, it's been termed the hump and dump, is the kettlebells are going away from you. It's weight going away from you. What does your body want to do? It wants to follow it because the weights are pulling you like this. But what you want to do when you're dropping is you're actually going to be shifting backwards as you drop. Same with snatch, right? Like you want to be like, woo, flying through. It's the weight shifts back. And sometimes it like, people do that like, this is the hump and dump, right? You're just kind of like humping the bells off you. You're dumping them away from your body. arms disconnect, further away, more work for your back. Instead, you're just turning your hands, weight shifts back, the bells are going to fall, and then you catch with your legs, straighten, legs, stand up, elbows in. So like, you know, a drill of like coming down from long cycle, bump, is getting that. You're coming down, weight shifts back, kettlebells here, and then your body's going the opposite way of the weight. Weights through the legs, body comes forward. Here, standing
And
up.
you didn't say this, but just like with snatch, you really want to make sure you're allowing your arm to get straight before you go into the backswing. So you take that tension out of your arm.
Yeah, having like the blood flow, right? You don't want any tension there, so the arm should be totally straight there. Just going back to the like cleaning to the shoulders type thing. So another drill that I was taught for catching, focusing on catching like your elbow first. Like obviously this looks super weird. You're never gonna actually be catching it like that. But practicing with your cleans, elbow hits, and then the bell will rotate like that. So, and that also helps your hand insert. And then you just focus. Elbow hits, and then the bell continues to rotate into place. Keeping that upper arm as close to your body as possible when you're dropping those straight arms. Again, we're not like throwing them away from you. Hands in, hands out. I know you used to clean like this, but now you clean like this. I prefer to clean like this just because there's like less like rotation happening and I'm less likely to hit the bells, but there are high level lifters with good results that rotate in and then
Yeah, I only honestly the only reason I transitioned from swinging thumbs back to swinging thumbs forward is I wanted to give myself more time in rack for rest. Like it's only like because it's a longer swing pattern when your thumbs are back because your elbow can bend, so you can swing the bell a lot farther.
Yeah.
So it helps, and some of my girls still do swing with the thumbs back. So that longer swing pattern is just less work because it's got more time to, you know, pick up inertia and get it to the rack. But you know, because it does two things. Well, one, you're swinging it for a longer period of time, so you do have more grip, your grip getting tired. And then the other part is it just takes longer because it's a longer path. And so I wanted like those extra milliseconds in rack for extra rest because it's like half a breath or whatever. There was a question about, I'll go ahead and give you two, the position for your eyes in the backswing, and then asking if you use the same type of hand position in your clean as far as going from the handle of the bell to the end in your clean as you do in snatch.
I'll answer the second one first because the simple answer is yes. I do go to the back of the bell and then I go straight up to the handle. It also keeps my arm closer to the body, right, just there. But yeah, I go from the back of the bell to the front of the bell. And then the other one was
your eye position. So where are you looking when you're in the back end of the clean? Where's your vision? Like where do you look?
So I have been looking forward recently to keep my chest up. Because like I said, like the tendency for chasing the bells down like this. Can you have your eyes looking down? Yeah, right here. And then the head can just kind of follow the body. You know, the age old, like, I got a grapefruit under my chin and, you know, I just follow my spine with this position. Looks a little stiff. But I find a cue for me that helps me to try to keep my chest up is keeping my eyes looking forward. So my head is a little bit like this right now. Does it mean it's gonna be like this forever? No. Does it mean it's like the end all be all of like technical things where I'm gonna break my neck or anything like that? No, it just helps me to keep my chest up on that drop, as opposed to I'm looking down, I'm going down. I'm looking down, my body's following.
There was another question about the hands forward, hands back when cleaning, just about, I guess, why I switched or how I knew. So when I was going 6 reps per minute or slower with hands back, it was totally fine. You know, I had enough time, but when I started moving past that 6 reps per minute, it specifically not for training sets where I'm just doing minute on, minute off, but when I was doing like competition, I really needed more time in rack. And so at the time, it was my coach that was like, hey, I think we need to transition and do this to give you a little bit of extra time. Then I had to like relearn everything, like how to swing, because I had never really swung thumbs forward like at all. So it really was about my coach, but I did notice, like I already knew like swinging like that was a longer swing and it was easier for me to clean. So the thumbs forward, I have to do a little bit more work to clean, but I'm getting more rest and rack. So it's like a trade-off of like where I'm willing to expend my energy. And at the time, it's like I was okay with giving up some of my leg energy to get those extra breaths. So yeah, I mean, it's really, and if you don't have a coach, like it is awesome when you have a coach, because even for as long as I've been swinging, like they see things that you don't see, right? And they will give you things that you're unwilling or don't like to do, so you shy away from them to make you do it. And when it's like on a program that somebody's given you, like you have to do it. I mean, you just have to. Versus like when you're building stuff yourself, you tend to do the stuff that you like, you know?
So true. And it's
so even if you don't have, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, going back to that, them seeing things that you don't see in yourself is like, you know, there's so many things that I've had a coach say, they're like, okay, do this. And I'm like, I know I'm supposed to be doing that. Like, you're like, I know that I'm supposed to be doing that, but I'm still not doing it. But I didn't see that I wasn't doing it fully until I had a coach say, like, no, this is how far back, or this is or this is where your heels are. I'm like, oh, I know that principle. So it's like, you always go back to the basics, but like, as you get a higher level, like those tweaks to the basics, yes, they're like smaller, and experienced coaches see those little things of like, okay, yeah, you're shifting your weight back, but you need to shift your weight back a little more. Like, you know, your weight's not quite in that foot enough where it needs to be for snatch, where you're like, oh, I know my weight's supposed to be in that foot. Isn't my weight in that foot? Well, it's not enough in that foot. Like, so having a coach be able to see those things and break it down for you, I think is really instrumental to progress.
Yeah, I think if you've never gone with having a coach, like even if you don't keep one forever, because it is expensive, like to have somebody continually like programming for you and stuff, but having that person there, even like mine was online, so he's not in person, you know, I just send him videos and be like, you know, it's crap. No.
You suck. No.
You suck. When I first started training, I had a huge long list of stuff that I needed to fix. Like, I mean, like 2 sheets of paper of stuff. And every day I would just kind of walk in and pick one of those items and I'd be like, I'm going to work on that today. And so that's kind of, and honestly, when I first started, I went to a seminar and they wouldn't certify me for the kettlebell sports seminar because I couldn't jerk well enough. And so, yeah. So, I mean, it's not like it's always been like this for me, just real easy. Like when I started out, I sucked.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I don't even want to look at my first videos. Like, I had my knees so bent in rack. I was like, my legs are killing me. And I was just like, this was my rack position. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I thought rack was. Like, you know?
We didn't talk about this, but I think one thing for people especially when they're learning the clean, is to really remember that just like in squat, you know, like when you're driving your knees apart during squat or when you're driving your knees apart during deadlift, you want to do the same thing in that clean. And you want to drive, you're not going to be able to see my knees. I'm in the bathroom still. So
Yeah.
you can't see the toilet, but you can see that you want to drive your knees out. And not necessarily driving them forward, because I think it contributes to like a lot of knee issues, especially in kettlebell sport. And you also, if you're not driving those knees out, you're not engaging your glutes and putting tension all the way up through the leg right before you're getting ready to drive your legs up. And so you're not utilizing like all the power that you have within your legs that you could be.
And creating space for bells too. Like I know a lot of people find it hard to get two bells between their legs, but really like if your knees are going out on your backswing and then forward swing, you can make space for those bells too. But I think you had a point about when you would go in with that list, you just pick one thing. I think that's another mistake that people fall into, is like trying to change too many things at once. It's like your brain can only handle, you know, maybe one thing at a time. We can like take this into like other part changes that, you know, you're trying to undertake in your life. But like, imagine you go into snatch and you're trying to change 3 things. It's like, where's your mind going? It's all over the place. Oh, breathe, wait, legs, hand insert. Just pick one thing and know that those other things you'll come back to and you'll work on later. Because if you try to focus on more than one thing in your training session, like the whole thing just kind of falls apart and it all feels like super uncoordinated and nothing comes together. So it is like the long game kettlebell sport. It's like you always come back to the basics, but if you're trying to fix too many things at once, you're going to fix really nothing. Yeah, or just barely.
Yeah, it's just be kind to yourself, because like you're only as good on the day that you're on. Some days I'll have really good lifting sets. Other days they'll suck. Sometimes I come in and I do snatch and it feels amazing the whole way through. And like 2 days later, I'm like, what the fuck was I doing the other day? Because now it's awful. Yeah. So just be kind to yourself and just try and pick that one thing that you're going to win at during that training session. So, you know, I'm sure you do. Some days I come in and I'm not going to hit the goals that I'm supposed to hit during the training session. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, like I need to refigure out what I'm going to win during this session. So I walk away with like a win.
Some sort of positive, like otherwise you're going to be spiraling down and quit and end up quitting. It's like, I like the rule of 5s. It's like in 5 workouts, you're going to have one amazing workout. You're going to have one super shitty workout. And then 3 of your sets are going to be like, meh, well, I got it done. Like, you know, like, so, and knowing that that's just part of the game. Is you're not going to come in and have an amazing set every time. You're not going to, like, you got to find those small wins within each session. Otherwise you're going to beat yourself up and not want to continue lifting. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if anybody, is there any other big things that you feel like you want to cover? I know we covered a lot of stuff.
I know.
So, and there's probably so much more that we could cover.
It's been a while.
So, if there's no other questions by anybody else, Corissa, she is available for online training. So I don't know if you want to post in the group what, you know, your information or whatever, or so she is available. I appreciate you coming on here and sharing information. Everybody that comes on here does it for free. So I think it's important that we just share the stuff that we have, because especially in our sport is so niche and it's hard just out on the interwebs, because a lot of the people don't know the sport and sometimes don't necessarily know what they're doing and what they're teaching. And it's, for a new person, it's a struggle to figure out what is the right information you're supposed to be watching or supposed to be listening to. And if you're only looking at the pros, like while they're lifting, you don't really know like the steps that it took to get to that point. And you don't really understand like how to get to that point. You're just like looking at the movement and trying to replicate it. So it can be very challenging when you're starting out, especially when you're lifting on your own, which a lot of people do. So I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and being able to come on and do this.
Well, I appreciate you having me. I mean, I've had so many people,
and I think we
helped me along my journey. So I'm more than happy to share what I've learned so far. Yeah. You're frozen.
We probably have to end it here. I think I just lost her.
You froze and maybe I froze, yeah. Yeah. Is it going or is it... Am I on TV or not? Oh, done. Oh.
We made it the whole time without it doing that, and then it did it at the very end.
I know. Did you hear anything I said or no?
No.
Okay, did you hear me say thank you or anything?
No.
Oh, okay. Because you were frozen. I'm like, am I just talking to anything? Okay. Well, I mean, thank you for having me. Like, I appreciate you having me on here. And yeah, like I said, that was frozen. I've had so many people share, you know, information with me and help me along my way. So I'm more than happy to kind of share the knowledge that I have with everybody else.
Okay, well, you have a good day, and
Thank you.
see everybody.
Bye.